When looking at the life of wild animals, I'm always amazed by their survival power. Whether in Siberian frosts or in the tropics, not to mention temperate zones, all animals are so perfectly harmonized with the nature that they hardly ever get sick throughout their lives. They get sick only in the old age, and that's what the old age in the animals is. Meanwhile, the is, as the only species among mammals, is an extremely delicate species in terms of health, and therefore suffers from any disease and constantly throughout the life. Why? What for? What's the point of that? It seems that we must seek the answer to this question in the very origins of the human species. I have already described them quite extensively in my works of so far in the context of the evolution of the man's psyche. And it turns out that the man's tendency to get sick is unexpectedly closely related to the question of the human psyche. I proved many times in my work, the thesis, that the nature recognized the anxiety mutation as extremely dangerous for the animals and thus the prehuman apes. Moreover, moreover, there is an evidence that the nature considered the anxiety mutation to be definitely catastrophic. The main reason was not the destruction of the psyche. Unexpectedly, the anxiety turned out to be more dangerous for the body as for the psyche. To put it short, the destruction of the organism by the anxiety is precisely what I call the somatosis. Since the matter goes as far back as to the primary psychosis, we will therefore use from now on the term of the primary somatosis. So, what is exactly the phenomenon of the primary somatosis? Well, the anxiety, being in the physical sense a continuous, spontaneous electromagnetic brain waves emission, though continuous stimulation of the central and autonomous nervous system, affects the entire body by the release of the neurotransmitters and endocrine substances into the blood. Such a constant stimulation, except for sleep, is inevitably extremely expensive in terms of energy, and this is what the nature doesn't like in the long run. The energy is priceless for the nature, and that's why the process of evolution means also fighting for a free access to the energy sources and limiting losing it. Moreover, such a constant, senseless anxiety stimulation of the whole organism disturbs the course of physiological processes of all organs and systems of the organism, especially the immune system. Therefore, the nature did not have to activate any additional mechanism to eliminate individuals with the anxiety mutation. They eliminated themselves through increased morbidity through the primary somatosis. In other words, primary somatosis is a continuous process triggered by the anxiety, the process of disturbing the physiological functions of the body, leading to a decrease in the organism immunity and consequently to a disease. Contrary to the absurd thesis of some physiological circles, of some psychological circles. The disease has never been and will never be a way of expression and communication. In the psychical sense, illness is a completely nonsensical phenomenon, and giving it any psychological meanings is an expression of a totally fairy tale writing, so readily practiced in the non scientific field of the so called psychology of so far. The human organic diseases are the first consequence of the anxiety. They are the physical consequence of the anxiety, and from the very beginning, they were supposed to eliminate the anxiety individuals from the race of evolution and the further history of life on Earth. And there were conditions for these individuals to actually disappear as a result of the plague of diseases that befell them. The mechanism of primary somatosis is a trap with no way out. The anxiety disturbs the physiological processes of the whole organism, and as a result, its immunity decreases. This is why all other animals, all other animals hardly ever suffer from any disease, living in extreme climatic and weather conditions, often cold, hungry, overheated, etc. The physiological processes in their bodies are not disturbed. That is why neither rain, nor cold, nor hunger are dangerous for them. And the man is so delicate, so fragile. A few minutes in the rain and the man is sick. Someone sneezes nearby and the man is sick. By the way, let's debunk the myth of a healthy lifestyle so popular in the modern people as a way to save their health. Indeed, avoiding all threats to human health, such as biological, chemical, and physical threats, would make sense and would be effective, if not for the fact that the man has a mechanism of primary somatosis embedded in the genes. The fact that we are alive is not the result of a healthy lifestyle, because it has no importance for the somatosis. If so, why do we live? Being actually doomed to disappear from the very beginning of our race. There is only one explanation. It's because of a miracle behind it. What a miracle! The miracle of primary psychosis. The primary psychosis is an idea for such an aberration of the anxiety psyche, so that the psyche could come out of the anxiety overload before the evolution developed the consciousness so strong that the consciousness was able to overcome the anxiety. But before the primary psychosis, the phenomenon of the somatosis appeared in the course of the evolution as the first consequence of the anxiety. Meanwhile, somatosis is the same aberration in the functioning of the human body as the psychosis in the case of the human psyche is. In both cases, we are dealing with the derealization of the functional sense of the processes. And so, in the case of primary psychosis, the psychological process becomes so unreal that is detached from the reality that the psyche moves to a higher than real level of functioning, to a symbolic level. At this level, the anxiety is deprived of the catastrophic harmfulness of its physical dimension, and in the symbolic dimension, the anxiety becomes a factor that inspires a creative symbolic life. What about somatosis? Here, the real physiological process is replaced by an unreal, non-physiological process. That's a process defined by medicine as a pathological process, a disease. We can therefore justifiably see an analogy between the unreal process called the disease process of the body functions and the unreal process called the psychosis of the psyche functions. While the psychosis turns out to be an extremely valuable achievement for the human species, as it opens a new dimension of existence, the symbolic dimension, the question of whether somatosis also makes sense is extremely risky. Let's put it clearly. All human diseases are nothing but somatosis, and the disease process of every disease is nothing else but a detached from the physiological reality function of a given organ of the body. And even in the case of an exogenous disease, the influence of an external factor is limited to inducing the derealization of the physiological process and therefore to the same what we are dealing in an endogenous disease with. So the analogy between psyche and somatics is perfect. Thank you.